Hello, old friends of the internet that I have not seen in months. Sorry for my absence. You guys know my eyes are super crazy jacked up, and I just haven't been able to really look at a lot of stuff to give you guys feedback on. But I did start eye therapy last week, and I'm headed in the right direction with that, and I've been able to, seems like I've been able to strengthen them, even over the last just 1 week of therapy. So I don't know. I'm excited. It's supposed to be a really long process, so I don't expect to be watching movies anytime soon or anything like that, or playing a bunch of games. But I did want to get just a brief couple of opinions your way from stuff that I've been able to just glance over. And first things up is the announcement that AMD and Intel are partnering on this new kind of mobile series of chips, CPUs if you will, with this kind of hybrid integrated dedicated GPU from AMD, interconnected right there on the same, interposer or whatever you want to call it. And basically, I think that is just crazy. You've been hearing rumors for this stuff for a long time now. You heard both companies, I think, deny that they've had anything like this going on to the press. AMD saying things like, we're not in the business of, supplying our competitors with our technology. It's not good for business, etc. Intel, I recall them denying several times as well that they had any, intention, even though they were rumored to have them, of putting AMD GPUs in with their CPUs. But as we have it, that turns out to be the case. Kaby-Lake G apparently will feature, like I say again, Vega-based, AMD GPUs using HBM2 and some sort of proprietary interconnect there, I'm sure, to the Intel CPU. But AMD really being able to do a lot of work and doing a lot of work in the semi-custom, market for semiconductors, GPUs, APUs, CPUs for tons of different customers. They do it for their, their console partners, obviously the Xbox One X, SoC, PlayStation 4 Pro, PS4, Xbox One, Xbox One S, whatever. They do a ton and a lot more out of the gaming space as well, but they do a ton of custom silicon, sorry. But for people, so they're used to being able to create and craft kind of these custom solutions for customers, and now Intel is one of those customers. So the crazy thing is, Intel is going to be selling these chips, and AMD will be getting a cut of Intel's their CPU sales, which is kind of cool. I know that they both have some cross licensing going on, and some other areas they make payments to one another for using certain technologies. But this is definitely huge, having hardware from AMD in an Intel CPU. So Kaby-Lake G, the CPUs look really good. I would estimate, I haven't seen anything on power consumption yet, but this is like a 3.3 teraflop, custom GPU from AMD that's going to be embedded with the Intel 4-core 8-thread CPU. And I'm thinking, somewhere around, you assume the CPU will probably use around 15-20 watts. An AMD Vega-based GPU of that size and that power will probably consume, I would say at least, 45, 65 watts, maybe, especially under load. And even that's a lot to ask for in terms of efficiency, in my opinion. But again, there's some technologies built in here that will help aid efficiency. The HBM2 is one of those. It's a direct stack with the GPU. This doesn't have to, it's not like DDR memory where it's placed all around the board. It's right there with it. So that helps with power efficiency. So that it should be a very efficient, combination in terms of CPU performance as well as GPU performance on, like I say, the same block. And for people looking for AAA gaming at 1080p, possibly, high or even better settings than that. I would say right around that area. Um, it's going to be a compelling offer from Intel and AMD. So this is going, right up against other things from Intel, their CPUs paired with NVIDIA GPUs, and that's going to be tough for. We'll have to see how it goes with system integrators and stuff like that, and see, how much they can get in terms of market saturation with this, and just in terms of overall product availability versus what's kind of been the norm, which is just an Intel CPU and an NVIDIA GPU for high-end gaming stuff. You've got at the same time, those are still great. If you're going super high-end gaming, you want the very, very, very fastest graphics and fastest CPU in mobile. You're still going to go for the highest possible dedicated Intel CPU and the highest possible dedicated NVIDIA GPU, at least at present time. So, this holiday, if you're buying a laptop, keep that in mind. The more power you get, the more power these chips use, the bigger the laptop you're going to have. For me, the most exciting mobile chips coming out this holiday, and there's a lot of great stuff coming from Intel with some AMD stuff built into it, as I just mentioned, but AMD's own R5 and R7 mobile, they call them CPUs. They're really APUs with integrated graphics units in there. But you've got the R5 and R7, and I forget the 2700, whatever they're calling them, but basically these are 15-watt parts, and that is inclusive of the power consumed by the integrated GPU. Now that may, fluctuate again under load and go a little bit above that. I would expect maybe to 20 watts, something like, maybe even 25. Who knows? But these are parts that will fit into very, very slim form factor, designs for ultrabooks that are sub 15 millimeter. They showed one, AMD did at CES this year, that was a 2-in-1, ultrabook, a convertible that would flip over, had a touchscreen, and it was, it was these chips. It's 4 Vega cores, it's 1 CCX unit. You've got, there is no Infinity Fabric in this thing. It's just this is the the monolithic part that AMD develops and basically glues together for all of its other CPUs that move up from desktop to high-end desktop to server space. But the Vega architecture, the Zen architecture at its simplest and really its smallest, monolithic single part is the CCX unit. And it includes one of those. It's hyper-threaded, so you have 8 threads. And these things are getting up there, I think, like, low base frequencies, just like the Intel stuff. They're going to have it around 2 gigahertz, something like that, maybe a little bit higher than that, but a low base frequency, and really good boosting frequencies on these AMD parts. I think 3.8 gigahertz was what I saw as a maximum. AMD doesn't really do what Intel does, though, in terms of really kind of truly promoting the highest possible peak, frequencies, at least on their data sheets. Intel will put out there all day long, this is something you could hit if you had like LN2, I'm going to see on some of the new Intel sheets coming out, because they just, it's a lot of it is, silicon lottery, cooling dependent, just like it is on the AMD side, but they put it on their stat sheets, whereas AMD has this new, I think Sense MI2 is a new revised stuff. Probably you'll see in the Zen 2 chips coming out, next year. But they're working on all this stuff on the back end of the Zen architecture. And XFR, extended frequency range, is one of those things they have on the desktop, but they have it on mobile as well. And in certain environments where the cooling is, deemed worthy, basically keeping these chips in check, at least in terms of thermals, you will see it go beyond 3.8 gigahertz, maybe you'll get 3.9, maybe even close to 4 gigahertz. I know that my 1700 is supposed to have a base clock of 3 gigahertz, and it runs at 3.2, no lower than that, unless it's going down into a power state somewhere. But anyway, they tend to underestimate their own clock speeds, in my opinion. And these should be some super fast CPUs with really nice, I mean, for the form factor, these GPUs, these integrated Vega-based GPUs should be fine. I think it's got like 10 compute units and is running at something like 1100 megahertz, something like that. But you pair this with some nice dual channel memory, and you can have an Ultrabook, I mean a true Ultrabook, like a Microsoft Surface tablet. I'd love it if they put these chips, at least had an option for them in the Surface Pro tablets. That would be awesome. Be sitting there with your tablet, playing Destiny or whatever. I mean, some AAA game, or maybe even some. I'm sure you could play some, competitive gaming stuff like Dota and stuff like that on these. It's some pretty good settings, and you may have to dial back the resolution and the settings in AAA, actual real AAA games, especially open world stuff. But you'll be able to play that stuff at the very least on, again, a very small form factor, ultra portable, extremely low heat dissipation, extremely long battery life, and just really elegantly designed pieces of hardware. You'll be able to sit there and just play your actual PC games on, which is going to be crazy. So I'm really excited to see, this entire kind of stack of mobile CPUs, integrated GPUs from AMD, kind of semi-integrated dedicated GPUs from AMD with an Intel CPU and the Kaby-Lake G series of CPUs, which both companies will be getting paid off of, obviously. And then you've got, obviously you've got your really high-end Intel mobile, souped up CPUs that are just there paired up with the super high-end NVIDIA, Pascal lineup of stuff, going up to some pretty, pretty excessive stuff for a laptop in terms of gaming performance, unless you got a 4K screen on your laptop, which that's a really small, you have to really have some really good scaling on that. At least in my opinion, I wouldn't get a 4K screen on a laptop personally. But anyway, I'm stoked for you guys. I don't know when this will be out exactly. Sometime. I'm hoping a lot of this stuff will be available, but I doubt it for holiday 2017. I'm thinking most of these chips will probably be, Q1 2018, at least in terms of actual availability. Intel kind of just paper launched their 8 series, Coffee Lake stuff. The availability on those has been, horrendous, at least from what I've seen. And the pricing too. I still think if you're buying, a regular mainstream consumer desktop this year, unless you're playing a game or you're gaming personally above 60 hertz, you've got like a 120 hertz or 144 hertz or 200 hertz monitor or something like that. You're doing competitive gaming. I think you can justify spending the money maybe on the Intel, Coffee Lake parts to get the maximum, frame rates. But other than that, price performance wise, for everything else you're doing on your PC, you're going to get more cores, more threads, and a hell of a lot better future in terms of being able to drop new chips into your current motherboard with the AMD Ryzen products than you are with Coffee Lake, and that's just a fact. So that's what I'd buy if you're buying in the mainstream market this year. If you're buying in the high-end desktop market, I think it's the basically same scenario there, where for the type of applications that people are going to be running, not necessarily gaming, or you're just an idiot, no offense, but if you're spending, that kind of money on a CPU and you can get one for a third of the cost or a tenth of the cost, well, not quite that, but the $2,000 i9 makes it pretty close. It has better gaming performance, then you shouldn't be doing that. But the high-end desktop market, I think the Intel CPUs, just because, again, Intel builds them monolithically, they're not, it's tough to get costs down, even with good manufacturing processes like Intel has. When you're building those big single monolithic chips, up to 18 cores with Intel on the high-end desktop. Super nice CPU, but $2,000, very expensive. The 16-core 32-thread I think is like $1,700, and you can get an equivalently, core and thread count AMD CPU, for like $879, and they've both got really good clock frequencies. I know that the Intel stuff gets a little bit higher, but you've got, I think, 4 cores that can XFR boost to like 4.2 gigahertz, out of the box on the 1950X for $879 from AMD. That's a whale of a deal, and they've got, much better decompression. They do a lot of multitasking stuff extremely well, obviously, and for that much money, and again, having, an upgradable, or at least a clear upgrade path, where the Intel, no matter what you buy, they're probably going to make you buy another platform for their new CPUs, in the high-end desktop space or in the mainstream space, wherever you happen to go. So, yeah, I mean, that's it, guys. If you're buying computers this holiday, keep that stuff in mind. I don't know that these mobile chips will be out in time. Like I say, I hope that they are, but still stuff to look forward to. Very exciting, to see. I think AMD and Intel working together is just hilarious at this point. And you guys have all seen, kind of the terrible relationship that they've had, and especially, considering some of the things that have come to light, at least for me recently, with Adored, doing that video a few months back, kind of exposing all the things that Intel has done that are really just kind of anti-competitive to AMD. I think that it shows a lot of AMD's character, and I think it's funny, I'm sure, but they're making money off it. Bottom line, working with Intel to produce, a dedicated GPU to go along with their CPU, I think is a really cool thing. But anyway, let me know your guys' thoughts down below. Which one of these products are you really excited to see? Is there anything that you plan on buying immediately when they come out? I think for me, again, it's got to be one of those. I don't like lugging around a big laptop. I'd like to see and get my hands on and actually buy at some point when I can, be able to use it again, and not to just justify it. But one of those thin form factor, AMD, quad core, 8-thread, 15-watt part with a decent enough, integrated GPU, Vega-based GPU in there, and be able to play some games on like a 2-in-1 or a tablet would just be sweet, in my opinion. So I'm looking forward to that. But if you guys plan on buying any of this stuff, if you have any thoughts, one way or another about, maybe I'm wrong, I have the value thing screwed up, and maybe you guys know something that I don't, that Intel's planning on releasing, their new Ice Lake CPUs and making them compatible with current motherboards. I think you're personally dreaming. If you look at the history of what Intel has done, they always make you buy a new motherboard when you buy a new CPU from them. So, but if you think I'm wrong, put it below. It was great seeing you guys. I hope to be able to continue working with my eyes and getting them stronger and stronger, and do a lot more of this content for you guys here, hopefully in the near future. So until then, I hope you're all doing extremely well as always, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.